We're going to cover the next chapter. This will be chapter 4. It's loading and performance. So let's dive right into it. The PIC is responsible for ensuring that the UAS is in condition for safe operation. Parts of this involves checking for proper loading so that the device operates to the expected performance. Prior to any flight, the remote PIC must ensure that any object attached to or carried by a small UAV is secured and does not affect the flight characteristics or control of the aircraft. You can follow the manufacturer's recommendations for evaluating performance and ensure safe and efficient operation. The manufacturer information may include operational performance details for the aircraft such as launch, climb, range, endurance, descent, and landing. It's important to understand the significance of the manufacturer's information regarding performance data. If manufacturer published performance data is unavailable, the remote pilot should seek out performance data that may have already been determined and published by other users of the same UAS manufacturer model, and use this data as a starting point. So, determining speed and altitude. The remote pilot must not exceed the regulatory limitations for operating a UAS. It cannot be flown higher than 400 feet above ground level unless flown within a 400-foot radius of a structure, and is not flown higher than a 400 foot above the structure's immediate uppermost limit. These are common navigational terms in relation to ground speed. Dead reckoning is a navigation solely by means of computations based on time, airspeed, distance, and direction. Plottage is navigation by reference to landmarks or checkpoints. The wind triangle is navigation using triangulation. The true heading and ground speed can be flown by drawing a wind triangle of vectors. One side of the triangle is the wind direction and velocity, the other side is true heading and airspeed. The last side is the track or true course. Each side of the wind triangle is a vector sum of the other two sides. Here's some possible ways for a PIC to determine altitude, which most of your standard drones on the market today, especially for aerial photography, have built-in GPS and some of these navigational tools already included. But if your drone doesn't, or if you're flying a fixed-wing drone, these are some ways that you can determine altitude. Of course, always you can start by installing a GPS. With the UAS on the ground, you can have a visual observer place the drone 400 feet away. That way it kind of gives you a visual idea of the size of the drone at that range. You can use the known height of the terrain and structures as reference. There's several different ways you can do this. So let's talk about loading for a minute. As with any aircraft, compliance with weight and balance limits is critical to the safety of the flight for the UAS. An unmanned aircraft is loaded out of balance may exhibit unexpected and unsafe flight characteristics. Same thing is true for an overweight UAS. It will definitely affect control and performance. Before any flight, you need to verify that the UAS is correctly loaded by determining the weight and balance. If a manufacturer does not provide specific weight and balance data, apply general weight and balance principles to determine the limits for a given flight. Okay, so like if we say let's say add weight to the UAS in a manner that does not affect the center of gravity. Although a maximum gross launch weight may be specified, the aircraft may not always safely take off with this load under all conditions. High elevations, high temperature air, humidity, and wind can affect the performance and payload of what you can carry. Other factors are to consider runway, How much room do you have? I fly fixed wing quite a bit, and some of the fixed wing UASs with a lot of equipment on them, they tend to get pretty heavy, and I require a whole lot more room than what I do with a smaller UAS. So always keep that in mind. It's important to remember that weight changes during flight. It can have a different impact on performance. Some of the UASs, they use a gasoline style engine, a hybrid setup, and as you carry your fuel, once that fuel burns, that can change your center of gravity. It would affect the balance and control of the aircraft. So let's talk about load factor. In aerodynamics, load is a force or imposed stress that must be supported by a UAS structure in flight. Those loads imposed on the wings or rotors in flight are stated in the terms of load factor. In straight and level flight, the UAS wings or rotors support a load equal to the sum of the weight of the UAS plus its contents. So in straight and level flight, they can hold the weight, their own weight, which is great. But once you start turning and moving, the load factor changes. Unmanned aircraft performance can be decreased due to the increase in load factor when the aircraft is operated in maneuvers other than straight and level flight. The load factor increases at a significant rate after the bank has reached 45 to 50 degrees. The load factor for any aircraft in a coordinated level turn at 60 degrees bank is 2 Gs. So it's 2 times the pull of gravity. The load factor in a bank of 80 degrees is about 5.7 Gs. These principles apply in both fixed wing and multi-rotor designs, but in case of a rotor wing type unmanned aircraft, the weight load must be supported by the lift generated by the propellers, because that's the only thing you have keeping you in the air. With a fixed wing, you have wings to help hold you up. We're going to move on and talk about stalls now. An airfoil is a structure or body that produces a useful direction of air movement. Airplane wings, helicopter rotor blades, multi-rotor blades, these all are a type of airfoil. The chord line is an imaginary straight line from the leading edge to the trailing edge of an airfoil. In aerodynamics, relative wind is the wind felt or experienced by an airfoil. It is created by the movement of air past an airfoil by the motion of an airfoil through the air. The angle of attack is the angle between the chord line of the airfoil and the relative wind. As the angle of attack increases to increase lift, the air will no longer fall smoothly over the upper airfoil such, but will instead become a turbulent or bubble near the trailing edge. A further increase in angle of attack will cause the turbulent air to expand forward. At an angle of attack approximately 18 to 20 degrees for most airfoils. Some are different. Turbulence over the upper wing surfaces decreases, and it decreases dramatically, which leads into a stall. So here we have this. We have a little visual representation. We have a little visual right here. Basically, a stall is when an aircraft stops flying. It no longer has the lift it needs to stay in the air. Because air density decreases with an increase in altitude, an unmanned aircraft must have greater forward speed to encounter the same strength of relative wind as what would be experienced in a thicker layer of air at lower altitudes. Performance or operational information may be provided by the manufacturer in the form of a pilot's operating handbook, owner's manual, or the manufacturer's website. Follow the recommendations for evaluating performance and ensure that you're flying in safe and efficient. The remote PIC should be familiar with the operating environment, but all available information regarding safe and recommended operation of the UAS. Even when operational data is not supplied by the manufacturer, it's the PIC's job to better understand the aircraft's capabilities and limitations by establishing a process for tracking malfunctions, defects, and flight characteristics. The remote PSC is responsible for ensuring that every flight can be accomplished safely, does not pose a hazard, and does not increase the likelihood of a possible loss of control. Practice makes perfect. When you're flying a drone and you know you're going to be flying for money, let's say you're going to be flying real estate, or you're going to film a wedding, or whatever, something like that, whatever you're doing to make money, always practice. Practice before. Learn the capabilities of the drone. Try to push it a little bit harder than what you're going to be doing the day of your actual video or your actual flight. You want to make sure that everything you do is in the capabilities of the drone. You don't want to push it too hard. You want to understand where maybe your throttle needs to be to hover out, or how far you would tilt the sticks left or right to get that bank angle that you need. All of that has to do with performance, and it's your responsibility to understand it and